In a small, unassuming town where nothing ever seems to change, lives Jane, a 50-year-old single mother with more stories than she'd ever admit and a toughness forged by years of sacrifice. Her days start before the sun rises, juggling shifts at the local diner and part-time hours at a community center just to keep her two college-age kids afloat. Her smile might look calm and polite to the people who see her serving coffee, but behind those eyes is a woman who's seen heartbreak, shouldered the world's weight, and told herself time and time again that love is a luxury she can't afford. Divorced and determined, Jane believes romance belongs in someone else's story, not hers. And really, who could blame her? With bills to pay and kids to raise, where's the time for candlelit dinners and poetic declarations? If you ask Jane what she wants, she'd say simple things. A roof that doesn't leak, kids who get their degrees, and maybe, just maybe, a Saturday evening where her feet don't ache from standing all day. But don't let her practical exterior fool you. There's a quiet, unspoken desire buried deep beneath all the stress. Maybe it sneaks in when the house is quiet at night, or when she sees young couples laughing like there's no tomorrow. And while Jane would never admit it out loud, she's whispered to herself once or twice, "Is it too late for me?" A fleeting thought, gone as quickly as it came, because the next morning, reality always reminds her that life doesn't leave much space for fairy tales. Unbeknownst to Jane, life has a funny way of shaking up your plans when you least expect it. Somewhere out there, far beyond her world of spreadsheets and grocery lists, fate is cooking up a surprise. A dash of glamour, a pinch of chaos, and maybe even the impossible, a spark she thought had long since burned out. Little does Jane know, her next chapter isn't just waiting, it's coming straight for her. And when it arrives, it won't be anything like the tidy, predictable life she's worked so hard to maintain. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, in a world of shimmering skyscrapers and extravagant luxuries, Ahmed lives a life most people can only dream of, or envy. A self-made billionaire in his mid-40s, his name is whispered in boardrooms and flashed across headlines, admired for his business empire and impossibly lavish lifestyle. But if you strip away the private jets, the penthouses, and the endless parade of yes men, what you'll find is a man who, in his quietest moments, can't escape a nagging emptiness. For Ahmed, success has come easily, but connection, that's a whole different game. He's been surrounded by people his entire life, yet somehow he's never felt more alone. Maybe it's because the relationships he's had weren't built on love, but on what he could offer. A diamond necklace here, a luxury vacation there. The thrill of romance in his world tends to have a price tag, and it always fades faster than he can write the check. Deep down, Ahmed's tired of fake smiles, of shallow interactions, of love that seems to vanish the moment you turn your back. That's why he finds himself in Jane's sleepy little town, a world far removed from his chaotic life. Officially, he's there for a low-profile business venture, or maybe just to escape the circus of his ultra-luxurious existence. But unofficially, he's there to breathe, to feel human again, even if just for a while. He wasn't looking for love when he stepped off his private jet that morning, and yet, as fate would have it, his path would soon cross with someone so ordinary, so unassuming, that it would shake the very foundation of everything he thought he knew about life and love. Because sometimes when the world you've built doesn't fulfill you, it takes an entirely different world, a smaller, simpler, beautifully authentic one, to remind you what really matters. It's funny how life works. Sometimes the biggest moments happen in the most unexpected places, a coffee shop, a grocery store, or a chance meeting on an ordinary afternoon. For Jane, it was just another day. Her hair tied back, wearing an apron and a tired smile, she was pouring coffee and cleaning tables at the local cafe, lost in her usual routine. But for Ahmed, stepping into that humble little shop felt like stepping into a completely different world. A world where no one recognized him, where the weight of his wealth didn't define him, and where for once he could just exist. And then there she was. At first glance, Jane wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads, at least not the way Ahmed was used to. There was no flashy dress, no polished diamonds, no glamorous air. But what Jane did have was something far rarer, something that made Ahmed stop in his tracks. It wasn't just her warm smile or the kindness in her eyes, but the way she moved through the room, carrying herself with quiet grace, like a woman who had nothing to prove and everything to give. Their meeting wasn't magical. It was mundane, really. Maybe she served him coffee, or maybe he struggled with the old sticky front door, and she helped him out without a second thought. But what Ahmed couldn't ignore was the way she made him feel human. For the first time in what felt like years, someone looked at him without calculating what they could take from him. Jane saw a man, not a billionaire, not an icon, just a man. Of course, Jane didn't think much of it at first. To her, Ahmed was just another traveler passing through town, though she couldn't help but notice his polished manners and a quiet elegance that didn't quite belong in her little cafe. But as their eyes met for a fleeting moment, there was something unspoken, something magnetic, that neither of them could fully explain. He was drawn to her resilience, the way she moved like someone who had carried the weight of the world and still found a reason to stand tall. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, authentic, unpolished, and refreshingly real. Ahmed didn't know it then, but that small, everyday moment marked the start of something that would change both of their lives forever. For Ahmed, one glance at Jane wasn't enough. There was something about her, a spark he couldn't shake, a rare kind of authenticity he hadn't seen in years. He knew she wasn't like the women in his world, where designer labels and perfect smiles were currency. No, Jane was something else entirely, unassuming, kind, and grounded in a way that captivated him. And for the first time in a long time, he felt challenged. But Jane, she wasn't so easily swayed. When Ahmed began showing up more often, trying to strike up conversations or leave a generous tip at the cafe, Jane was skeptical. Who was this polished stranger with the mysterious accent and expensive suit? And why was he looking at her as if she were some kind of puzzle he desperately wanted to solve? To her, this had all the red flags of a man who either didn't know what he wanted or, worse, was playing games. Yet Ahmed wasn't the type to give up easily. He wanted to prove himself, and in true billionaire fashion, he didn't hold back. A bouquet of flowers the size of her kitchen table arrived at her door one afternoon with no note but an unmistakable intent. The next day, a mysterious, anonymous donor had suddenly contributed to her children's college tuition. And then came the most extravagant gesture of all, a dinner invitation to the finest restaurant in town, where Jane found herself seated under glittering chandeliers, feeling completely out of place in her thrift store dress. But here's the twist. While most women might have been swept off their feet by such grand gestures, Jane wasn't. Instead, she met each act of generosity with equal parts gratitude and suspicion. She'd been through too much in life to fall for fairy tales. "You don't even know me," she told him bluntly one evening, her arms crossed, her voice sharp enough to cut through his carefully curated charm. That honesty, it didn't push Ahmed away. If anything, it drew him in even closer. For the first time, someone was questioning him, challenging him, not because of his money, but because of who he was. And for all his wealth and success, Ahmed realized something. He wanted Jane not because she was impressed by him, but because she wasn't. As Ahmed pursued her, Jane's children started to notice the way their mother smiled just a little brighter after their encounters. Even if she denied it with a laugh, they could see it before she was ready to admit it. Maybe, just maybe, Ahmed was different. And while Jane couldn't quite bring herself to believe it yet, a part of her started to wonder, could he really mean all of this? Could a man so different from her world, her life, her struggles, truly care for someone like her? Ahmed wasn't giving up, and Jane wasn't giving in. Not yet, anyway. But fate? Fate had other plans. As Jane and Ahmed's worlds began to intertwine, the contrast between their lives became impossible to ignore. Jane was a woman of simplicity, her days defined by routines, bills, and putting her children first. Ahmed's world, on the other hand, was one of excess. Private jets, exclusive parties, and decisions that moved markets. To outsiders, it might seem like a fairy tale, but for them, reality wasn't so kind. Ahmed's family, steeped in tradition and status, was the first obstacle to their blossoming relationship. The whispers began almost immediately. "She's too old," some said. "She doesn't understand our culture," others insisted. Ahmed's relatives had spent years dreaming of him marrying someone younger, someone from their circle, someone who would uphold their family's legacy. And Jane? She was the furthest thing from their expectations. But the resistance wasn't one-sided. Jane had her own battles. Deep down, she couldn't stop the doubts creeping into her mind. How could a man like Ahmed, a man who could have anyone, truly want her? She wasn't the glamorous type. She didn't belong in his world of silk and crystal. At night, when the house was quiet, she'd look in the mirror and wonder, why me? The whispers from Ahmed's family and Jane's insecurities loomed large, threatening to unravel everything they were trying to build. Their relationship became a constant push and pull. Ahmed, determined to win over both Jane and his family, took on the role of peacemaker, often trying to explain to his loved ones that love isn't dictated by age, status, or culture. But breaking the chains of expectation wasn't easy. His family questioned everything. What will people say? How will this look? And Jane? She wasn't ready to make things easy either. While Ahmed tried to shield her from the opinions of others, she couldn't ignore the way some people stared at them. A sharp contrast between his polished, traditional Arab attire and her modest, everyday clothes. The questions echoed in her mind. Do I fit into his life? Can we really make this work? But amid all the challenges, there were moments that kept them moving forward, like the way Ahmed would lean in during a quiet conversation, truly listening to her fears. Or the way Jane surprised Ahmed by learning a few Arabic phrases, awkwardly mispronouncing his name one day to make him laugh. Slowly, they were building something no one expected, a partnership that blended two entirely different worlds. Every cultural clash, every moment of self-doubt, became a chance for them to prove that love isn't about fitting into molds. It's about breaking them. And as much as the world tried to pull them apart, Ahmed and Jane held on tighter, finding strength in each other's determination to fight for something real. Because love, as they were learning, was worth every battle. As the days passed, the pressure of society, culture, and tradition seemed to weigh heavier and heavier on both Ahmed and Jane. But no matter the doubts, no matter how many times they were told it couldn't work, they found a way forward. Because for all their differences, what they shared was undeniable. Ahmed knew deep down that this wasn't just another fleeting crush. This was real. Jane had brought out a part of him he hadn't even known he'd been missing. A warmth, a depth, a sense of connection that money could never buy. She saw him for who he truly was, not the millionaire businessman everyone fawned over, but a man who wanted something more than just prestige and attention. And Jane? She might have hesitated, might have fought the idea of love entering her life again. But with every act of kindness, with every conversation, every moment spent with Ahmed, she found herself letting go of the barriers she'd built. Her heart began to open, slowly, cautiously, but once it did, it opened completely. No amount of age difference, no cultural gap, no family objection could shake her trust in what she was feeling. She had to admit it, what they had, what they shared. It was real. And when something is real, you fight for it, no matter the cost. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, long nights when she wrestled with fear and insecurities, wondering if she was good enough for him, if their worlds would ever truly connect. But then, in the quiet, when she looked into his eyes, all those fears melted away. Ahmed was there, not for his money, not for his status, but for her. And with every touch, every laugh, every conversation that went long into the night, Jane knew that this was the kind of love she had once thought was out of reach. Ahmed stood firm against the tide, fighting not only for their relationship but for the chance to show his family that true love didn't follow rules. No matter the expectations, he was committed to building something with Jane. Something lasting, something real, something they could call their own. And in those fragile moments of uncertainty, when Jane thought it was all too complicated, all too impossible, he was always there, patient, understanding, loving. Until one day, all the doubts faded, and Jane knew this was love, nothing more, nothing less. Because sometimes love isn't about having the perfect timing, the perfect situation, or the perfect ending. It's about finding someone who accepts all your flaws and loves you not in spite of them, but because of them. And just like that, Jane and Ahmed knew that the journey they had ahead, no matter how difficult, was one they would face together. True love, it turned out, didn't care about age or culture or family. It just cared about the people who were brave enough to believe in it. Love isn't easy, and it's certainly not always the fairy tale we imagine it to be. But for Ahmed and Jane, they found their own version of happiness, and against all odds, it was beautiful. They weren't concerned with what the world thought anymore. They had each other. The road had been long, with endless challenges, cultural divides, and a few sleepless nights filled with doubt. But here they were, standing on the edge of something extraordinary. And now the final question remained. Could they make it last? Could their love withstand everything the world tried to throw in their way? The answer came in one simple, unforgettable moment. One evening under the soft glow of 1,000 candles, with only their closest friends and family present, Ahmed looked into Jane's eyes, those warm, tired eyes that had seen so much, but had never given up on love. With his heart pounding in his chest, he knelt in front of her and asked her the one question that would change their lives forever. "Will you marry me?" And for the first time, Jane didn't hesitate. She didn't wonder about the age difference, or the disapproving whispers from his family, or how she might fit into his extravagant world. All she knew in that moment was this. Love wasn't something that followed a timeline. It wasn't something that could be expected. It just happened. With tears in her eyes, she whispered a yes, a simple, profound yes that came from the deepest part of her soul. Yes to love. Yes to this moment. Yes to a new life. Their wedding was a beautiful fusion of two worlds, a celebration not just of love, but of understanding and acceptance. Her modest dress and his traditional attire came together in a way that symbolized the blend of everything they had become, two very different worlds standing side by side. The past couldn't define their future, and neither could the stereotypes or doubts that had once loomed over them. This wasn't just about them getting married. It was about a new beginning, one where their love proved that anything was possible, even against the odds. Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe in second chances? Do you think love can truly conquer all? Or do you have doubts just like Jane had? Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like this story if you believe that love, real love, is always worth fighting for. Subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss a story about defying expectations and finding the kind of love that makes life unforgettable. True love doesn't follow the rules. It makes its own. And just like Ahmed and Jane, you might just find that love in the last place you ever thought to look. Through all the trials, through every heartbreak, culture clash, and family objection, Ahmed and Jane's love proved one thing. When two hearts are destined to beat together, nothing in the world can stand in the way. What started as an impossible journey filled with doubts, questions, and barriers ended in a new life, a life where love had no limits. Their story became an inspiration to those around them. People talked about how they defied the odds, how love and commitment triumphed over age, culture, and societal expectations. And as they stepped into their future, hand in hand, they knew it wasn't going to be without challenges, but it would always be worth it. They proved that no matter where you come from, no matter how different your world might seem, love has a way of building bridges where there were once walls. The days ahead were full of promise, not because everything was perfect, but because they had each other, authentically, deeply, and unequivocally. And as they stood together surrounded by loved ones, their wedding not only symbolized their union, but also the blending of two cultures, two hearts, and two people who dared to dream against the odds. In the end, their story wasn't about age gaps or cultural divides. It was about what we all seek at the core of it all, the kind of love that withstands time, challenge, and change. Now here's where you come in. Do you believe true love can really conquer all? Do you think that age or background should stand in the way of love? Let us know your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this story, give us a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs a reminder that love knows no limits. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories. And remember, whether you're from a quiet town or a bustling city, love has a way of finding us when we least expect it. And when we're willing to break the boundaries that hold us back. True love isn't always easy, but it's always worth it.